All right, we're going to get started here. So thanks for everyone for joining. My name is Brian Flynn. I'm a solution architect here at Attivio. So today's webinar session is really to just walk through our cognitive search and insight capabilities. So we're going to spend really a brief moment here over the course of the next 25 minutes, just walking through a quick demonstration of various end user applications that are built on top of the Attivio platform. Specifically around knowledge management and customer 360 capabilities. And you'll see what I mean once we start to get into the demonstration. In terms of logistics, I've actually muted everyone on the phone, and I've actually pared down chatting capabilities to go directly to me. So, time permitting at the end of the call, I'll open up the floor. I'll mute everyone if there are any questions, but if not, we can just kind of follow up afterwards if anyone wants to send any follow-up questions over email or over phone calls. So I'm going to go ahead and get started here. Just a couple slides to jump in and kind of set the stage for the Attivio platform. So, Attivio has been around since about 2007, so 10 years at this point, over a decade of experience within this company, and even more broad leadership beyond that in terms of folks that have worked in enterprise search since really its inception at the beginning of 2000s and the end of the 1990s. And really the way to think about Attivio is essentially based on four major and key differentiators. With the Attivio platform, we provide immediate visibility into all of your data, so really unifying all of your data sources, regardless of where that content comes from, content from SharePoint 2010, SharePoint Online, Jira, Jive, Google Drive, databases, structured, unstructured, we work with it all. And from there, our ability to not only unify our data sources through a single unified index, but also to contextually enrich that data set, performing content analytics using machine learning and natural language processing capabilities around stemming, levetization, entity extraction, classification, sentiment analysis, really empowering the end users to ensure that you're unifying all of your data and enriching it as part of the ingestion workflow into an Attivio platform. We are a completely agile platform, and I stress the word platform because it really truly is that, in the sense that folks have the flexibility to build any integrations, pushing content into and out of an Attivio index. So, contextually enriching your unified data and generating a web application, a native mobile application to fit your business need. Those are just a sampling of the types of capabilities and applications that clients of Attivio have deployed over the course of the past 10 years. And then finally, proven execution, so really increasing that the hockey stick growth, as it were, in terms of time to money and time to value. So ensuring that when you're deploying Attivio, you're rapidly building out applications, and not just a single application, but multiple applications based off of that single unified index. In terms of cognitive search and insight, as Attivio views the world, and this is based off of analyst research, as we're citing here, 66% of employees are dependent on search in their daily work. So whether that means they're logging into their local intranet, that means they're logging into their local GitHub repository and searching for a particular piece of content. Everyone is using search in some capacity or some form, but only less than 50% of these employees have the ability to search across all of those data silos. So, many of the clients that we're talking to that we've successfully deployed Attivio on are typically coming from a world where they have 1, 2, 5, maybe 10 screens of different data sources that they have to search through, and that just introduces all kinds of complexity in and of itself from a day-to-day operational perspective. And even beyond that, including all those screens that are available, for the folks that have to live in that type of a world, over 40% of those employees are not happy with how those search results even provide relevancy, never mind if they can even find the content to begin with. And as a result, our studies show, and the analysts are reporting to us, that over 45% of companies are planning to replace their existing search technology within the next 3 years. So whether they're replacing their site search that they've deployed with a legacy system like Google Search Appliance or FAST, whether they're replacing their SharePoint 2010 or SharePoint Online site search because it's only restricted to those particular silos. A lot of folks that come to Attivio are really looking to unify those data sources, enrich those data sources, and rapidly build end user applications that are meaningful to their end users. And even more to the point, when we think about, enterprise search, traditional enterprise search versus cognitive search, we kind of view the current state of the world as, the second wave or the second coming, essentially, of enterprise search, in that, today when folks typically think of enterprise search engines, whether that's Solar or whether that's, GSA, which is, end of lifing at the end of this year, typically they're really focused on 3 water flow-like tasks where they find their content and then they analyze their content and finally decide on what to do with the content that they found, whereas Attivio's approach to cognitive search is, closing the loop and essentially ensuring that as those folks are analyzing and deciding how to act on that content, all of that information feeds back into the platform, so we're constantly improving the overall end user experience through relevancies, through changing the end user's UI, a lot of different business use cases that are available based off of that type of a platform capability. And the last slide here before we jump into demonstrations is what I call like the layer cake slide. We're not going to spend too much time on this. Again, if there are more technical questions that we don't get a chance to cover off in the course of these 30 minutes, certainly feel free to follow up in a phone call or an email. But this is really what you're talking about when we say the platform, and just briefly overviewing what we're talking about here, reading from the bottom up. Again, Attivio works to unify structured and unstructured data sources, whether that's a web crawl, whether that's structured data that lives in your Hadoop or your big data environment, or whether we're going directly against your SAP mainframe or your Oracle database. We can ingest all of those data sources and, again, start to perform that content analytics, classification, natural language processing that includes sentiment analysis, entity extraction using our machine learning techniques, really improving and automating the metadata enrichment of that content to allow you to empower end user capabilities that we show along the top. Traditional knowledge management, internet search applications, maybe more of a customer 360 or employee 360 dashboard that lets you know everything that you need to know about an interaction with a given customer or employee or person of record or note. And even to the point where we can speak SQL and integrate directly with business intelligence tools like your Tableaus and like your Spotfires, and allow your business analysts to leverage an Attivio index in much the same way that they would leverage a database, but rapidly taking advantage of visualization tools like Tableau to build out, whatever BI dashboards or whatever BI presentations they need to in a very sophisticated manner. So that's all the slides I have. I'm going to jump into demonstrations now. And I actually have 3 demonstrations that I want to show today. The first 2 are actually public implementations of the Attivio platform. And when I say public, I mean they're actually production deployed. And 2 of our customers, some of our largest customers actually are Cisco and IRENA, or the International Renewable Energy Association. And we're going to start with Cisco, in particular Cisco Sales Connect. So Cisco came to Attivio several years ago, and they actually had, a very classic knowledge management problem where, they wanted to ensure that their data sheets, their technical white papers, any of their marketing material could be easily findable and consumable by the public at large. And even more to the point, not just making sure that the public could find their content, but also the sales teams that work for Cisco could find that same marketing material, as well as content that's specifically secured and highly confidential to those Cisco employees. Things like price sheets, things like marketing strategies, things like vertical selling strategies, things that would be resources that would be very specific and very relevant and important for those sales teams. And at the time, there was a lot of confusion around where was the best place to get that content. Do I go on the public website on Cisco.com? Do I log into my SharePoint site and look at the marketing section of SharePoint? Do I have to log into Confluence because there's a new wave of implementation where people are migrating to Confluence? So again, that multiple screens issue, and also there's an issue of security and ensuring that only the right people, only the folks that have access to see a particular type of content are going to be able to see, again, those price sheets or those marketing strategies. So you fast forward 3 months, and Cisco has actually deployed this end user application on top of the Attivio index. So they start by unifying all of those disparate data sources, regardless of where they're coming from, and then they've built this end user application that allows either the public or internal consumers of Cisco to actually log in and find the direct piece of content that they're looking for. So I'm going to start by doing a search for one of the many products that Cisco generates on a regular basis, and you'll see again autocomplete terms that are coming up based off of the entities that exist within the Cisco corpus of content. Entities in this case being different product names and different product lines, switches, routers, things of that nature. And I'm going to go ahead and just search for the entire Catalyst series. Actually, I'm going to back this out real quick and get a much more broad result here. So one of the things I want to point out is, again, our ability to perform automated content analytics on top of this index that allows us to essentially generate a more robust end user experience. So what you're seeing here is essentially search results that are coming back for the keyword search of Catalyst. Again, they're Catalyst series of switches. And I want to call your attention to the left-hand side here where, again, very much like you'd see in an Amazon.com-like shopping experience where you're searching maybe for a Panasonic TV or a 42-inch screen, you're going to start by generating a bunch of results that are somewhat relevant and somewhat related to your actual desired end result here. But you're typically going to use the faceted navigation on the left-hand side to drill down directly to the particular result that you're looking for. And the most important thing to call out here is faceted navigation is not necessarily a new thing in the world of search, but the ability to ensure that we're automatically creating some of this metadata on the fly for Cisco, allows them to very quickly operationalize and provide an end user experience that's compelling. So understanding, based on content that we're processing, by the thousands on a regular basis, which of this content belongs to, is of type case study versus of type data sheet versus of type presentation. We allow Cisco to build their own business logic and essentially set it and forget it to allow us to understand and quickly categorize what type of content actually exists within this data set. So these can be easily used to drill down quickly on, show me all the case studies that have been generated for the Catalyst series of switches. And then there's also some social elements that have been built into this application as well. So if I kind of back out to my previous result here, you'll actually see that within each of these results, there's a rating system that's being applied to any document that's being published and made available on Cisco Sales Connect. So again, using the kind of a very forward-thinking knowledge management approach in saying that we're not just going to provide a search experience that kicks them off directly to their end result after they've found the page that they're looking for, the resource they're looking for. We're going to actually bring them into this interstitial page that gives a lot more information about what this content is and allows other users of Cisco Sales Connect to provide their social feedback and ratings and comments on how helpful or non-helpful this particular piece of content was. And this is important because as these end users, by and large, start to come in and start to share their thoughts on how these results are relevant to their goal of finding their particular piece of content, all of that information, again, comes back into the cognitive search engine that allows us to essentially improve relevancy automatically based off of not just folks that have downloaded the content or viewed the content, but specifically how they've rated it. So you can start to influence and promote content that has a higher rating versus content that may not have hit the mark or may not be relevant to really any end user. And then the last piece I want to show here is, the ability to not just view or download the content, you can share within the application and then even add this content into what would be considered a virtual briefcase. So this is very helpful for folks that want to save content and essentially generate a briefcase that's relevant to specific topics that are of interest to them. So again, think of a sales representative within Cisco. Maybe they cover the Midwest region and they have folks in education or they have folks in, energy department. And there's a lot of different collateral that's very unique to those two verticals. They can easily come into this application and start to save the particular pieces of content that are highly relevant and related to, the vertical of energy versus the vertical of education for their region. So the whole idea here is, sharing content, sharing swaths of content, and using all that information to continuously improve relevancy is a key component of Cisco Sales Connect and a great demonstration of, how Attivio can be used to leverage all of the capabilities of cognitive search and insight. The next demonstration I want to show is the IRENA International Renewable Energy Agency. So again, a very similar use case in that they had a multiple screen problem, and more to the point, they had a lot of folks that were coming to IRENA specifically and requesting various types of data, different data sheets or research articles that IRENA publishes on a regular basis. But the team at IRENA couldn't keep up with the demand of the types of researchers and librarians that are looking to find very specific types of content. So, enter Attivio, where we're able to, again, unify those data sources, perform contextual enrichment on those data sources, and then allow them to empower an end user application that can let people quickly find the content that they're looking for. And again, this is a completely public site, so feel free to check this out on your own time after the end of this call and let us know if there are any additional questions. When I search for the key phrase renewable energy, you're going to get brought to a very traditional looking search results page, very Google-esque or very Amazon-esque in terms of showing keyword highlighting, showing autocomplete terms along the top here. So this is kind of the first phase, or the first iteration of IRENA, where they wanted to ensure that folks could quickly drill down to the particular pieces of content based on what type of energy that's being published within these articles, what countries being spoken about, where are these data sources being published in from. And again, we have 8+ different data sources where they could originally be originating from, and as well as what's the document type. So again, very similar to what we were showing previously. I think the things that are interesting about IRENA is they kind of took it to the next level, and before I click on the data and statistics, they actually provided more of a browsing experience for their end users. And this is kind of more of what I'd call a topic page approach, where again, it's all still being based off of that same unified search index, but they're essentially providing kind of a browsing or almost like a Wikipedia-like experience where someone doesn't necessarily have a particular keyword or concept of mind where they're looking for, oil research or, a solar or wind energy research. They just want to come in and browse what the research or what the articles have been, or what articles have been generated based on the particular countries, and maybe like the UK as an example. And when you click on that result, you're immediately brought into the United Kingdom topic page, which tells you essentially, it gives you a different view into that same search results we were seeing previously. But the whole idea of this being that this is kind of that evergreen page that any end user, any research, any researcher that wants to maybe bookmark this page in their browser, or come back to this page as something they can continuously check on to see, has there been any new research from IRENA that's been published on Great Britain or Brazil or Russia? Again, a very different approach to the same type of a problem in terms of using cognitive search and insight capabilities to find the data that you're looking for based off of continuously monitoring for new content that's being published through. And the last piece I wanted to show is, again, based off of that same unified index, as I was alluding to previously, we have an easy integration into various BI tools like Tableau, like Spotfire, where, as I'm showing an example here, IRENA has actually gone ahead and built a lot of different dashboards using the Tableau, enterprise Tableau capabilities, the web-based Tableau in this instance. But essentially, all of the data that is powering these dashboards that have been built within Tableau is coming directly from that same Attivio index. So again, it's understanding that you can not only build very compelling search capabilities on top of an Attivio index, but you can empower insights from that same index to ensure that people can be understanding or finding the answer to the question, but then maybe understanding that there are more questions they should be asking in the first place. And that's leveraging all the same API and SDK capabilities that Attivio has for empowering these types of end user applications. The last demonstration I want to show here is much more of a 360 view, as we call it. In this scenario, it's more of a customer 360 view. This is an internal demo. It's not necessarily one that's using real data or particularly any of our real customer information. But this is a very common scenario that we have with a lot of our financial services companies, in the sense that they want to be able to empower maybe their wealth managers with the ability to understand anything that there is to know about their customers before their customer hasn't even a chance to talk to them. So I'm Brian Flynn. I have to service 5,000 different customers as a wealth manager, and I want to understand anything that Mike Davis might be asking me before he even gets a chance to put a word in edgewise. Maybe Mike Davis is calling me on my cell phone. I see he's coming up on caller ID, or maybe he's just having his cell phone number come up. Whatever the case may be, I want to quickly be able to search for the customer that I want to be able to service at this point in time. And as soon as I go ahead and click on Mike Davis, I'm going to get brought to this 360 dashboard view of all the information that the Bank of the North has about Mike Davis. So again, I want to be able to answer his question very succinctly and very quickly before he has a chance to get a word in edgewise. And I like this demonstration because it really does show the kitchen sink, as I like to call it, with Attivio's platform capabilities, because it very quickly gives you an idea of how we can not only unify structured and unstructured data sources, but we can also perform very advanced content analytics capabilities around classification, entity extraction, and sentiment analysis. So along the top here, I want to call your attention to the structured data sources that we're actually pulling in particular, all of these transactions, the historical transactions that we've had with Mike Davis in terms of what are the stocks he's purchasing through us, what are the stocks he's selling through us, and what are those buying patterns looking like. So based on the structured data source, we can understand what his buying and selling patterns are, what holdings he even has in the first place, and what are the breakdowns of those particular brokerages. So we can quickly build out these visualizations to give you an understanding of, here's his breakdown of brokerage versus IRA for his 80,000 that he's actually invested with us. Here's how it breaks down across equities and commodities. And over the course of the last 5 years, here's how his account balance history has trended upwards or downwards. In addition to that, this dashboard is showing unstructured data sources that, again, are unified to any of the stocks that this particular customer has actually been investing with. So, again, if Mike Davis is calling me, he's probably calling me in a panic or maybe with some elation about one of the stocks that he's seen in the news. So when I'm picking up the phone before I even get a chance to talk to him, I want to have those news articles directly at my fingertips in terms of the particular stocks that he might be investing in and what's going on in the marketplace today, in case I haven't seen them already. And then the last piece down below here is kind of the coolest stuff where, a lot of our customers are using Attivio to not only monitor internal structured sources and external unstructured data sources, but they're also monitoring internal unstructured data sources, like an exchange service, or maybe we're monitoring, chat logs, transcriptions of conversations, and that allows us to get some pretty interesting insights in terms of understanding what is the sentiment of these different types of conversations. So we can take a look at some of these emails where he's talking about he's talking about emerging markets, particularly around Brazil and the company Petrobras. So, we can take a look at this document and any single document that comes in by the millions and start to understand what is the sentiment of these particular conversations. And that's being denoted by the fact that some are green versus some are being red, or maybe some are actually showing up as neutral. We can perform sentiment analysis on the conversation at large, and we can also perform sentiment analysis on specific entities, which is a patented technology for Attivio, where we're able to not only automatically identify entities like Online Portal, but also understand what is the sentiment around this particular entity of Online Portal. So that can allow you to not only explore very quickly, what are some good or bad conversations, but again, you can extrapolate that information into very interesting visualizations. So we can see very quickly if Mike Davis is calling us on the phone, that's probably a pretty good indicator that he's not happy based on the historic conversations we've had with him, versus when he's sending an email in, we've got a pretty good shot at having a good conversation with him. And most importantly, we can start to gain some insights in terms of when he's having positive or negative conversations with us, how is that impacting the bottom line for the Bank of the North? How is that impacting his buying and selling patterns? And if you want to drill down even further on some of these conversations, you can click on these key phrases and start to understand, again, more quickly, how is the conversations around his online portal where he's talking about apparently how terrible it is. How has that impacted his buying patterns with the Bank of the North and how we're able to service him? So that's pretty much it. Again, a bit of a crash course here in terms of Attivio and what our capabilities are. I'm going to thank everyone for their time today. Again, my name is Brian Flynn, and feel free to reach out to myself or any of our representatives if there are any further questions or follow-ups.